So we are on part 2 of the doctor's opinion, which is still in the Roman numeral section. And we're just going to pick up here. It says, later he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. So the he is Bill Wilson, and this is right after his 3rd treatment at the Charles B. Towns Center Hospital, where he acquired some new ideas. And what he's asking the hospital is, hey, can I work with the other alcoholics in this hospital? I would like to carry the message. And they're like, all right, Bill, you've been here 3 times. You're one of the worst drunks we've ever known. But hey, our recovery rate is so low. Have at it. Okay. They're just like, go for it. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them. Let's pause there for a second and ask, does AA today have this reputation? Do we as individual alcoholics have this reputation? Are we leaving a trail of unselfish acts? Are we leaving a trail of recovered alcoholics? What is the result of our strenuous efforts to carry this message to other alcoholics? The entire absence of profit motive, right? So we remember from the book that selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. So unselfishness, altruistic action is the opposite of the problem. And if we're getting paid, does that not take away from the unselfishness of our action? Their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one. Looks like we're missing a word here. We feel after many years of experience, which we established was already 38 years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. What does that mean? We have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than altruism, unselfish constructive action for another. Check your own experience. Check what you're doing. How are you demonstrating altruism in your life? Okay, so we want to remember that on the first page of the doctor's opinion, it states part of our rehabilitation is to carry the message. This is different than meeting attendance and sharing about yourself, sharing about your day, what you're pissed off at, what doesn't feel good. That's a different thing. Okay, let's check out the cycle of addiction here. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. So here's our cycle. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, and let's pause there for a second. How do we succumb to the desire when we've already sworn off alcohol? That is the mental difference in the alcoholic mind, right? The insane idea will always win out unless we can experience a psychic change. The insane idea will win out, or there's a strange mental blank spot, meaning that the mind isn't even going to check in with you. You'll just see yourself lifting a drink and taking that alcohol in. And once that alcohol comes in, we have triggered the phenomena of craving, being bodily different, and often running. Beyond human aid. If you cannot rely on your mind to keep you sober, then you are beyond human aid. After they have succumbed to the desire, again, as so many do, and the phenomena of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree. And we'll see in Bill's story that this happened to him, and this one drink that he took lasted 2 years, right? So this is the stages of a spree, which could be days, weeks, or years. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerge remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink or use again, right? Get arrested, lose a relationship, get fired, something horrible happens. Like, no, I'm swearing off alcohol, not going to do it again. And you mean it, you genuinely mean it. And then there's a period of dry time that can last, days, weeks, or years. But then the rids come up again, right? So this is repeated over and over. This cycle is over and over. And check your own experience. What does your life experience tell you? Does this ring true? Is this what it feels like? This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. That is super clear. So to me, what I see here is impending death or being institutionalized. And my only way out is through a psychic change. So it becomes of paramount importance that I understand what a psychic change is and I understand how to get it, right? If you want what we had, the first 100 men and women, what did they have? Deep and effective spiritual experiences. Do I want that? Am I willing to do that? See, nowhere in this has meetings been mentioned. Meetings are a tool that we can use, but it is not the sharpest tool in the toolbox. If I'm over here, headed into the strange mental blank spot, sitting in a meeting isn't going to fix that. Right? We know from page 89 that when all other measures fail, work with another alcoholic will save the day. So I need to know how to work with other alcoholics, and I need to have that on repeat and accessible. So on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them, right? That's the unmanageability of life. Suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, and the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Let's pause here. There's a lot to unpack in this paragraph. Remember, this is the voice of Dr. William D. Silkworth. This is not Bill Wilson speaking right now. And so what Silkworth is seeing is someone who's not drinking. Hopeless alcoholics who are not drinking, right? What does it mean to have a control over the desire to drink alcohol? Well, that's a direct contradiction to the statement that I'm powerless over alcohol, that I'm beyond human aid, that I don't have control. So what does it look like for the real alcoholic? Well, that's on the bottom of page 84 through page 85, which our promise is. And it says the problem is removed so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. I'm not making a decision. I'm not controlling my desire to drink or not drink. What I'm doing is focusing my attention on these few simple rules and keeping in fit spiritual condition to the best of my ability, right? So what are these rules? Well, I've listed them for you. Okay. We're going to read them right now and talk about what these few simple rules are. I just want to share with you when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, of course I was balking at the word God and the spirituality of the program. And I'm like, no, this is not for me, right? And the other people in the meeting were like, take what you want and leave the rest. Okay, there's not much that I want. I certainly don't want to face the prejudice I have around God. I don't want to dig deep and understand what spiritual terms mean to me. I don't want to do prayer, meditation, service, none of that. I'm a drug addict who's like pissed off, like super angry, right? So when they say take what you want and leave the rest, that was I mean, that helped me stay around for a little bit, but it certainly didn't bring about a psychic change, right? If you want what we have, right? What did they do? So here we have it. Let's go to the bottom or page 27. And when it says 0, what that means is that there's a paragraph already happening at the top of the page. So top of page 27, without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude, right? And that attitude is towards spiritual principle. It's towards spiritual principle. Page 50, the 4th paragraph. Let's go check that out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. Page 55, the 4th paragraph. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Page 72, 1st paragraph. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do with it? Well, here's our path. This is the path. We have been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator and to discover the obstacles in our path. What does new mean? It doesn't mean that I take my old idea of God, shine it up, and try to make that work when I'm dying of a spiritual malady. New is something that hadn't existed before, right? First thing I have to admit is that my idea of God didn't work, and I was dying behind that. So I'm coming into this with a new attitude, with an open mind. Please reveal yourself to me. Please show me who you are. I cannot use my alcoholic mind, especially when it's been, doing alcohol and drugs for so long, to define the creator of the universe, and to hit that mark. Instead, I'm going to clear away what's blocking me off from the truth within, and then I can experience that truth within. And we know from varieties of religious experience that this is ineffable. The knowledge that we get through a psychic change is ineffable, meaning incapable of putting into words. We will know things that we didn't know before by going through this process. That's what I'm after. I'm after the truth. Page 85, the 3rd paragraph. 1, 2, 3. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed his directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. So we know from page 55 that deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, that it is obscured by pomp, calamity, and worship of other things. And we can take a look at the 12 steps and see that they are a process of removal, of facing and removing everything that is blocking me off from having an experience of that great reality within. And once I do, I will know things that I didn't know before, which will accomplish the new idea and the new relationship with God. page 80, okay, all the way through page 80, top of page 86. So step 11 suggests prayer meditation. We shouldn't be shy in this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Check your attitude. Does your attitude align with what it states here, right? What are the rules? What is expected of me? We know that in 1941, Bill Wilson made a statement in the Grapevine that our first obligation to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program. We know from Appendix 2 that I must have willingness, which is demonstrated only by action, honesty, which is introspection and awareness of where I'm at, open-mindedness, an open mind to all spiritual concepts. That's what the Alcoholic Seeking Recovery brings to the table. There are 57 musts in the big book. This is not take what you want and leave the rest. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So here's just a couple of notes that we already went through. And Dr. Silkworth is continuing. He says here, faced with this problem, if a doctor's honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce this essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, actually it was 2%. At the Charles B. Town Center, which treated 50,000 addicts and alcoholics, top hospital in the United States, and they had a 2% recovery rate. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit that we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. Check your own experience. Did you respond to the ordinary psychological approach? I had a therapist, a psychiatrist, everything did not work. Majorly depressed, suicidal, couldn't wait for this to end. Now, we understand also from page 27, when Roland Hazard was working with Dr. Carl Jung, when he said to him that this approach wasn't working with the alcoholic mind that you have. So I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. Check it out. What do you think? Have you not demonstrated strong mental capacities in other areas of your life? It has been said that alcoholics have above average intelligence, special abilities, skill, and aptitudes. We often excel in certain areas of life where we may hold a particular talent. But when it comes to not picking up a drink, we cannot use the mind at all. It is absolutely useless, right? The mind that is the problem cannot solve the problem. I have an alcoholic mind. I am beyond human aid. I need this spiritual awakening, psychic change. So I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomena of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomena of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. Let's go to page 24, the fourth paragraph. See what they want to tell us here. Okay, one, two, three, four. When this sort of thinking, right, alcoholic mind, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. What's your experience? The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. There's the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or environment. There's the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, that he can take a drink without danger. There's the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then there are the types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. So, do we need to worry about this classification? Not really. There's one solution that fits all, right? It's not my program, it's not your program, it is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, singular. Is it possible that there are spiritual laws of the universe? And maybe this is our chance to learn and apply them in our lives. We are spiritually sick. The solution is spiritual. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Well, of course, this immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. We now know that the American Medical Association recognizes this, that we are bodily different, and this is real. When alcohol goes in my body, it does something different than it does in a normie, right? A normie can drink a couple sips. I watched my aunt take a couple sips of wine and her cheeks got rosy and she loosened up a little bit and didn't finish her glass of wine and it was over, right? I take a glass of wine and next thing you know, I'm under a bridge at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to score some dough. Alcohol runs through the body differently. And there is a lot of medical evidence these days that we can rely upon, that we can look for. And it is a recognized disease. The other thing that I wanted to say about this is if we can remember from the forwards, when Bill Wilson first came to see Dr. Bob, he came in, Dr. Bob said, I'll give you 15 minutes. Bill chose this as the topic to approach him with first, not the spiritual solution, right? We must be convinced of A, B, and C, that we are alcoholic, that we could not manage our own lives. We must be convinced of that first before we introduce the spiritual solution and start talking about prejudice of God and all of this. Because if we are not convinced, there's no way we're going to be willing to do this introspective journey and look at our fears and look at our anger and everything else. So we have to be convinced on what it means to be alcoholic. And we saw, I'm going to go back to that slide. I have a chart here, and there's also a worksheet. I have a link to a worksheet that you can use. I'm going back to it. Here it is. So I have this worksheet. This is what it means to be alcoholic, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal of his mind, that I have an alcoholic mind, maladjusted to life, full flight from reality, outright mental defect. So you can click this link and look at each one of these things and get the page numbers. It is so important that we're convinced that we are alcoholic before moving forward, right? Remember from the original manuscript, If you are not convinced on these vital issues, you ought to reread the book to this point or else throw it away. So how many people are not doing a thorough first step? Step one, how many people don't know what it means to be alcoholic? You can kind of hear them because they'll say things like, I choose not to drink today. Oh, really? I didn't know that you had a choice, that you had the power of choice. I thought you were suffering from alcoholism, which means without choice, right? That I'm suffering from disease that my mind convinces me to pick up, my body demands more, and I'm stuck in the cycle of addiction unless I can have this psychic change. These are the most important things to me to understand about alcoholism. Okay, so let's kind of get back to where we were. Solution. Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. Remember, this is Dr. Silkworth. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. Well, that's awesome. Now you can study the book. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. Pause there for a minute. Have you accepted the plan outlined in this book? Do you know the plan outlined in this book? Or have you decided to do 90 and 90? Work the steps out of the 12 and 12. Talk about yourself, refuse to work with others. Just, practice that honesty, that introspection, take a look within. Where are you on the path? So 1 year later, he called to see me and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with what Silkworth sees as self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but I was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted bar, determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment was a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. Well, his alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression was so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have an effect. So this is the story of our Southern friend, which is from the original Big Book. Many of the original stories have been replaced in later editions. We're going to talk about that more later on. Our solution is actually not based on willpower. It is based on finding the one that will solve your problem, right? Daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. The problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, and the mind that is the problem cannot solve the problem. I cannot rely on my mind to keep me sober. I cannot rely on my mind, who has a defect of a strange mental blank spot, to remember my last drunk. That is a terrible strategy and a complete contradiction to what it says in our Big Book. So this guy is Fritz Maio. Our third and fourth editions do not have many of the original stories left. We'll talk about that some more when we talk about what is the purpose of our story. So, however, he did become sold, right? He became convinced of A, B, and C. He became sold on the ideas contained in this book, and he has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. Okay, well, that is the end of the doctor's opinion. And just a reminder to keep working on the homework that will come up when we get to page 47. Great. So, parking lot is open.
Okay. I'm looking through my notes because I wrote questions. So, pertaining to fit spiritual condition, I have two questions. So, is part of keeping in fit spiritual condition working with others, service? Is that a part of keeping in fit spiritual condition? Because I feel like the ideas came they were mentioned closely together.
Absolutely. We know from page 89 that it is the sharpest tool in our toolbox.
Okay,
Working with others works when all other activities fail.
okay. And then for a long time, I feel like I have attempted to be in fit spiritual condition, prayer, meditation, conscious contact. However, um, based on this information, there might be a hole, a hole in that. And what I'm kind of feeling like what was mentioned maybe a few minutes after is that perhaps pomp, calamity, worship of other things might be obscuring the spiritual condition that I have felt like has worked for me in the past. So I guess the question specifically is based on this information, and I feel like there might be a hole in my relationship with God. Is it safe to say that perhaps pomp, calamity, worship of other things might be obscuring that?
100%, right? So that's why we have step 10. What I know from what you shared with me before is that you had made contact, you had felt that, and now today, fast forward, it's obscured again, right? But you can remove what's blocking you off from feeling it again.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have 10, 11, and 12, because we aren't, it's like a bodybuilder, like that bodybuilder may lift weights and be like in perfect condition for that competition, and then the next day they have a rest day, and then they have a rest day, and they may take 2 weeks off, and they're not going to be in the same condition that they did at that competition. This is why we have a daily reprieve contingent upon our work in writing the columns 10, 11, and 12.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I'm learning this, listening to this, taking notes, and relating it to the relapse that I had beginning last year. That, like you said, in the cycle of addiction was supposed to be like a one-time thing. Well, it most certainly was not. And yeah, so, and then my next question is, what are the simple things? Because you had mentioned simple things there, in the list, honesty, open. I think that was what it was listed under. But my question specifically is, and I just might have missed it, but what are maybe a couple of those simple things, a few simple things? Does that question make sense?
Yes, it does. Sorry,
Okay.
I accidentally muted.
No worries.
The book mentions that it's simple but not easy, right? And
Mhm.
you can look at the spiritual concepts that are present in our steps, which are prayer, meditation, introspection, and service to others. Those are simple ideas, but they're not easy. They're not easy because I may be unwilling, I may be full of prejudice, I may have a closed mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And then in terms of honesty, because when you say the word introspection, you've correlated that with honesty. And so that must mean also, or maybe only, honest with oneself and others, both.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. You know,
Okay.
we have to develop this rigorous honesty, right? And honesty, we start with an looking at ourselves, getting honest with where we're at. So here's an example. My mother was one of the worst alcoholics and drug addicts out there. And I always said to myself, I'm not going to be like her. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. Well, of course, guess what happened? And even though I was in full blown addiction, I mean, just everything was there. I literally would say I'm not an alcoholic and I'm not going to be like my mom. It's not that I wasn't lying, but I lacked the awareness that I was an alcoholic. It was
Hmm.
a dishonest statement, not because I was lying, because I didn't have this awareness. That's what we're looking for here, this rigorous honesty, this awareness of where we're at on this path.
Hmm. The reason
The
I
line,
asked, oh, I'm
okay,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was
Ah,
just, when you said that, it reminded me, so I don't know, this past spring, so quite a while ago, I was trying to work with someone, sponsor, sponsee type relationship. And that was in March. And um, I had gone into a rehab early March. And then by late March, I was drinking again. And I did not share this with that woman. And then, of course, it came out that I had omitted that. And she was very shaming about it, um, and kind of gave me like an ultimatum, like if you ever lie to me again, like I will, you're not willing, like your secrets are keeping you sick. None of which I am debating. That's probably accurate. But I guess my question is that example of being in that cycle of addiction and not sharing right away. Again, like I said, it ended up coming out, but um, every time I hear honesty mentioned in this big book study, I think about that example, and it was really scary to, I felt such guilt, shame, remorse about having lied to her about it. And I guess what I took away, what I internalized, um, is that I have to tell those that I'm working with or whatever, like every single tiny thing, or else like I don't know. I guess I have some confusion about on it. I know what honesty is. I guess just that experience was very rattling. Do you have any thoughts on that?
of course. I mean, I can totally relate to that. You know, remember in the book it says once in a while he may tell the truth.
Right, right. I remember I wrote that down. I thought about that for days after because I found it I found it so true. My experience, I'm married to an alcoholic. I mean, it's so true and it's funny and it's sad. But anyhow, yes, go ahead. I thought about that for
Right.
days and days.
So I mean, think about the newcomer, think about somebody who, the reason we lie is from ego or fear, ego, something around that space. Just can't possibly get honest with another human being. So to me, it seems more important that we first get honest with God.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when we, if you want to make a connection with God, you do that through honesty. So we got to get right with ourselves, get honest with ourselves, get honest with God.
Yep.
What will come naturally is the honesty with other people.
100%. I agree. And it actually reminded me, I had that experience when I got sober in 2009. Um, I had a burning bush experience, a sudden and profound experience with God, and I had this particular sobriety date, and about, I don't know, maybe like a month, 2 months later, I had realized that I had had one drink like a few days after that sobriety date, and there was no more fear around being honest about that. Like it had gone away, or ego, maybe both. But I was so like there, I was fearless in discussing it. I was fearless in sharing it, you know. Um, so now fast forward to present, and like all the junk is just like piled on top of me, calamity, pomp, worship of other things, where I'm now like so fear and ego driven, that feels way more difficult now, than all those years ago. But yes, I was first honest with God, then honest with self, and then I was just like, actually, I don't remember to whom I shared it with back then, but I shared it, and it was just, I was fearless about it. The result didn't matter, it was just this like God thing that had come over me, in the sense that like it didn't matter what happened as a result of changing that day by just 5 days, still though, um, so that's definitely an element that's missing now, I would say, for myself. Just
Yeah, but it's going to come. It's going to come back.
Yeah,
It's just fear. It's just fear and pride.
correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other quick question that I have is, it's the worksheet that you had, what it means to be an alcoholic. I want to make sure to get that. It,
Oh,
that
yes.
Yeah.
I will put it, I'll put it in the comment section as a link, and I'll also give it to you directly.
Okay, awesome. Anyway, those were the big questions that stood out for me. And again, the other thing that stood out for me is just being convinced, if you're not convinced of A, B, and C, like throw this book out, like you have to be convinced, not you. I have to be convinced of A, B, and C in order to move forward. That's what I heard. That's what I got. Is that accurate?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're sitting in meetings, listen to what these people are, what some people may be saying. And what I come to the conclusion of is they are not convinced. There wasn't a thorough first step.
Right. And I've heard a lot of other things in meetings, like throughout the years, like you do the first step out there before you even come in. People, yeah, I've heard that, like answer these questions, and just all this stuff about the first step. But it sounds to me like what the big book says about the first step is being convinced of A, B, and C. Is that
Yes.
correct?
And it also, I mean, not only for ourselves, but it also teaches us a big part of what we're doing when we work with other alcoholics. That this investigation, the beginning of the book up to page 60, is designed to convince us of A, B, and C. And so we want to be quite thorough about that. And it gives us a little direction on what are we trying to do. When we're sharing about ourselves with another alcoholic, not to indulge in our own stories and our own ego, but maybe use our own personal experiences as examples of the alcoholic mentality, right? The big book gives us two things when it talks about sharing your story or sharing your personal experiences with someone else. One is to demonstrate the alcoholic mentality. The other one is to show how we establish a new relationship with God. It is not 50 minutes of me going on and on and on about my stages of a spree. So we can see how much more powerful that is, and we strive to be that when we're working with other alcoholics. I just spent so many hours of my life, right? Got into AA when I was 17. I'm going to be 52. Been to thousands and thousands of meetings and have sat there and heard stories, so many hours of it, that I could get a bachelor's degree with that amount of hours. And it's
Mhm,
just the ramblings of an alcoholic mind, the drunkalogue.
mhm.
Never established the alcoholic mentality or how a new relationship with God happened. So I just think it's super important that we take that in and strive for that when we're working with other alcoholics and not waste their time.
Right, exactly, exactly. Um, and then you brought up one other question. It'll be my last one. You said the sentence, a new relationship with God. And um, again, to reiterate, I've had a relationship with God, I believe. But again, I've based on the last period of time, it might appear that there are some holes in that. Um, do you think that it's sufficient just to clear out the pomp, calamity, worship of other things, or are there things that can even be done in the interim time to begin establishing a new relationship with God?
Oh no, I definitely think that there is more to be had, right? There are causes and conditions. We got to get down to causes and conditions, first of all.
Mhm,
And think about it for a second. I don't doubt that you had that experience that you're describing to me and that you made conscious contact with God. I don't doubt that.
mhm,
But I want you to follow my train of thought here for a minute. If you think about planet Earth, the solar system, the sun, the moon, the stars, all the species of animals, the billions of people on Earth, and how we're all different. We're not clones. There's diversity. I mean, there's a massive, massive intelligence at work here beyond our finite mind ability to comprehend. So I think that there is more
mhm,
to learn, more to discover, and clearly, just based on what I know, our experience together, God is really, really trying to have a relationship with you,
mhm, mhm,
and there's more there to be learned. So instead of, I'm just going to continue a little bit more. I mean, I used to, before I got into the big book study, I worked the steps out of the 12 and 12 with the sponsor, went to meetings every day. And when we got to step 2, it was write down what you want your higher power to be.
mhm.
So I wrote down what I wanted my higher power to be. And it was, idealistic, soft, gooey.
Yep.
I wanted all the children and animals to be safe, just
Mhm,
stuff that wasn't even going to happen, wasn't possible. So, first of all, I was using my mind and what I wanted to try to define the creator of the universe, which is invisible. Okay. Now, this time around, I did something different. Instead of me trying to define what I want God to be or what I think God should be or any of this stuff, I took a different approach, which is I'm going to shut up and I'm going to stop trying to define God and I'm going to let God reveal itself to me.
yep.
So I'm going to sit around, listen, look, listen, look, right? If I wanted to know who you are, I don't walk up to you and say, "Oh, here's this lovely person. I think she should be A, B, C, and D," and try to have a relationship with you based on what I think you should be. Instead, if I really want to know who you are, I'm going to silently stick around and
Mhm,
let you slowly show me who you are. That's the only way I get to know the truth about you.
mhm,
So, yes, I agree that you had, and I believe that you had that remarkable experience, a
mhm,
marked point in time where you knew that God was. But there is more here.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Listen, look, stop, deciding, and silently stick around and show me who you are. Yeah, I like that a lot because
God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek him. And yet I know that you are seeking and that you are looking for a deeper relationship. And the thing is, you know that it's real,
Hmm.
but you're not accessing it and you're not getting the peace of mind and serenity that our promises give us. So there's more to be had.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And then some of the ways to do that is, silently, and the word silently and the word listen. Um, Stuff that comes to mind aside from literally what those words mean is meditation, and just stop forcing, stop doing, stop making, stop insisting, and just begin to let things fall where they fall without being that actor, right? Those are some of the things that are coming to mind with the words silently and listen.
Exactly. So our brain is a really nice machine. It's a wonderful calculator, and I love it for academia and for work. I love solving problems at work. I love figuring things out. I love reading and learning. And it's a nice tool for that. But but it's actually been the number one thing that's gotten in the way of me having a new relationship with God and all of that. So I look at my brain now as just another tool in my toolbox to help me do the things in life that I need to do, or to enjoy like mental stimulation. But it's the only way that I use my brain on this spiritual path is to study this big book, to create the slides, to think of better ways to carry the message. That's it. It's
Mhm.
certainly not going to wake me up and say, God is A, B, C, and D, and you have peace of mind. It's like, it's totally in my way.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
it's hilarious.
Mhm. It is tragic and funny, both. Yes, exactly. Um,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
okay. So should we stop the recording here?
yes, that sounds good.